Welcome back to Cafe Karma. I hope you can hear that imaginary espresso machine hissing in the background, maybe the clatter of a cup hitting a saucer. Get comfortable, because today we are getting grounded. We are settling in.
It is good to be back. And grounded is exactly the right word for where we are going today.
Absolutely. So let's recap for anyone just joining us. In our last deep dive, we were looking up at the sky. We had all this massive cosmic imagery, the banyan tree spreading out, the ox cart loaded with goods.
Right.
It's all about abundance, growth, and this heavy, slow transport of resources.
The celestial level, as we call it, the blueprint.
Right. But blueprints don't pay the rent. Today, the mission is different. Today, we are bringing that chariot down to Earth. We're looking at the terrestrial level. We want to know, if you have planets in Rohini, or if this star is prominent in your life, what does that actually look like? How does it manifest in your psychology, your body, your daily grind?
It is the shift from the symbol to the experience. And when you look at the classical texts, the description of a Rohini native starts off very well, very charming.
Charming is an understatement. I was reading through the source notes and one word kept popping up. Madhubashi?
Yes, Madhurbashi. It literally translates to sweetly speaking. The texts describe these individuals as truthful, pure, and possessing a kind of innate, seductive gentleness.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here immediately. The texts say, sweetly speaking, truthful, pure. It sounds a bit like a Disney character.
Right.
But in the real world, someone who is that seductive and magnetic usually leaves a trail of chaos behind them. Is this actually good energy or just effective energy?
That is the million-dollar distinction. It is effective. Remember the myth we discussed? Rohini wasn't just nice. She was the moon's favorite wife.
Oh, right.
And that implies exclusivity.
Which implies exclusion for everyone else.
Precisely. The shadow here isn't malice, it's possessiveness. The ability to captivate someone so thoroughly that they ignore their duties to everyone else. It's the kind of sweetness that traps you. It implies a dynamic of having and holding that can, turn into obsession.
Okay, let's unpack this, because possessiveness is a broad term. I want to get specific. The sources break this down using the Padas, the four quarters of the star.
Yes.
And this is where I get stuck in the notes, because it seems like Rohini has four very different flavors depending on exactly where a planet falls.
To really understand the psychology, you cannot just say Rohini. You have to look at the Padas. Each nakshatra is divided into four parts, and each part filters that energy through a specific zodiac sign in the Navamsha, or the subchart. It gives the energy a specific direction.
So let's walk through these. I want to start with the first Padada. This falls in the Aries Navamsha, which is ruled by Mars. So on the surface, you have Rohini, the calm, stable, slow-moving cow. But underneath, in the subchart, you have Aries the ram, ruled by Mars, which is all about impulse and speed. How do those two not just cancel each other out?
They don't cancel out. They create a pressurized engine. The texts call this the spiritual warrior, but I think a better way to visualize it is productive restlessness.
Productive restlessness. I like that.
The source notes describe this native as someone who fights against exploitation. Why? Because they have the stability to stand their ground, the cow, but the Martian fire to actually strike back, the ram.
So they are just sitting on the ox cart. They're driving it aggressively.
Exactly. Unlike the standard Rohini, who might be content to just accumulate, this version is obsessed with results. The sources mention this is a common placement for writers or philanthropists.
Oh, interesting.
They take the material resources, the stuff of Rohini, and they use that Martian drive to push it out into the world.
Right.
It's the difference between having a library and writing a manifesto.
Got it. So that's the first flavor, the warrior. Now, moving to the second Pada, this one falls in the Taurus Navamsha, so it's Taurus within Taurus.
This is what we call Vargadama. It means the planet is in the same sign in the main chart and the subchart. This is the strongest part of Rohini. It is ruled by Venus.
This sounded like the powerhouse to me. The notes describe it as having the power to materialize thoughts. That sounds like magic. Conjuring resources out of thin air.
It can feel like that, but it isn't magic. It is extreme focus. If the first Pada was about fighting for resources, the second Pada is about attracting them.
Right.
These natives have an uncanny ability to bring things into existence. One of the sources, Bepin Bahari, refers to this as the Great Deep, or Bythos. It is an incubator. Ideas are preserved here, nourished, and then birthed into reality.
But, and there's always a but, if you can manifest whatever you want, doesn't that make you a bit spoiled?
It creates a dangerous loop. The shadow here is extreme materialism.
Ah,
Because they're so good at manifesting, they can get stuck in the material world. They want to see every desire in concrete form. It creates a loop of desire and fulfillment that is very hard to break.
right. I thought it, I got it, now I want the next thing.
Exactly. It is the great deep of sensation.
It's the trap of the golden handcuff.
Exactly. Now compare that to the third pada. This falls in the Gemini Navamsha, ruled by Mercury.
So we go from heavy, earthy Venus energy to Mercury flexibility, arts, business. This feels lighter.
Much lighter. The energy shifts from accumulation to exchange. This is the intellect serving the accumulation of wealth.
The sources mention this area is less prone to getting stuck than the second pada. Why is that?
Because Mercury is about movement. The second pada hoards, the third pada trades. It is shrewd.
Okay.
These people are often good at business, science, or the arts because they understand the value of things, not just the possession of them.
Yep.
They can move resources around without getting emotionally attached to every single coin.
That brings us to the fourth pada, the Cancer Navamsha, ruled by the moon. And this feels like we're circling back to the emotional core.
We're circling back to the water. Cancer represents the home, the mother, emotional security.
But the notes warn about a danger here, holding on too tightly to what one has grown.
Yes. The fourth pada is the mothering principle in overdrive. The drive here is to protect. But if you protect something too fiercely, you stifle it, or you become paranoid about losing it.
Ah, so it becomes possessive.
It can manifest as possessiveness in relationships or literally hoarding resources because you are afraid of being without them. It is the shadow of the moon fear of the waning phase.
So we have the warrior Aries, the manifestor Taurus, the traitor Gemini, and the protector Cancer. That gives a much more nuanced view than just stubborn bull.
Absolutely.
It seems like growth, which is what Rohini means, happens in four very different ways.
Absolutely. You can grow by fighting, by building, by exchanging, or by protecting, but the underlying engine is always that desire for abundance.
Now let's talk about the specific planetary personalities, because the sources gave some fascinating profiles for the sun and moon in this star. Let's start with the moon, since the moon, well, loves Rohini.
Moon is exalted here, yes.
So if you have your moon placed here, you are emotionally anchored in the material world.
And the description is, well, it's basically a movie star description. Beautiful eyes, magnetic allure. It is the archetype of Krishna.
Right. The texts explicitly mention Krishna was born with his moon in Rohini.
And if you think about Krishna's stories, he was the ultimate romantic, the magnetic figure that everyone was drawn to. He was the center of attention, always surrounded by abundance, butter, cows, and admirers.
But there was a trait mentioned here that I found really funny. The cow-like quality.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just about eyes, it was about being unresponsive to external stimuli.
It sounds a bit clinical, but it is true. Have you ever tried to get a cow to move when it doesn't want to?
I have not, but I can imagine it's a losing battle.
It is impossible. Rohini natives have this stability. They are charming and stable, but once their mind is fixed, they do not change.
So they're stubborn.
Incredibly stubborn. They don't react to pressure the way others might. They just stand their ground, chewing their cud, so to speak. You can scream at them, push them, beg them. If they are comfortable, they aren't moving.
That explains why they are so good at holding on to things. They just outweight everyone else.
Yeah.
What of the sun? If the sun is in Rohini,
Then the identity is wrapped up in creativity and beauty. The soul identifies with what it can produce.
I have to bring up the wordplay here because it blew my mind. The source pointed out the linguistic connection between Rohini and words like robust, romantic, rose, Romeo.
It is fascinating, isn't it? They all share that row, and they all share the quality of enjoyment, of fullness.
So a sun in Rohini person needs to see that fullness around them.
A person with a sun in Rohini seeks validation through building something robust or experiencing something romantic. They need to feel that life is blooming around them. They are not minimalists.
And lastly, the ascendant, the face you show the world.
If the ascendant is Rohini, the physical body itself takes on that Venusian lunar energy. Attractive, often with those magnetic eyes we mentioned, but the vibe is salt of the earth.
Oh.
They come across as reliable, conservative, but very productive. These are the people who build civilization. They are the bedrock.
Okay, so that's the psychology. But we promised to get terrestrial. And nothing is more terrestrial than the human body. And I noticed a really interesting thread in the medical astrology section.
What stood out to you?
Well, we know Rohini rules the face, mouth, tongue, and neck. But the specific ailments listed aren't just random infections. They seem to be mechanical failures related to flow.
It comes back to that concept of flow versus hoarding. Rohini is a kapha star. In Ayurveda, kapha is structure, earth, water. It's the glue that holds the body together.
Right.
But what happens when you have too much glue?
Things get stuck, you get congestion.
You get stagnation. The notes list sore throats, swelling in the neck, and goiters. Think about the psychology we just discussed. The desire to hold on to resources, to possess, to keep things for yourself. When that manifests physically in the neck, which is the bridge between the head and the body, it creates a blockage.
So the throat issue isn't just a cold. It's a somatic response to holding back.
Often, yes. It can be holding back speech. Remember, they are sweetly speaking, so maybe they swallow their anger. Or it can be a literal accumulation of tissue.
Wow.
The sources also mention ailments arising from overindulgence in food or sex. Because Rohini is about enjoyment and consumption, the body can suffer when that consumption isn't regulated.
That makes the mention of apoplexy or sunstroke really interesting. That's not a blockage. That's an overload.
It's a system crash from too much input. The texts warn specifically about apoplexy in relation to the sun in Rohini. It's the biology of excess. Too much heat, too much blood, too much consumption, causing a sudden shutdown. It fits the theme of too muchness.
And the neck connection suggests vulnerability to things like thyroid issues too, right?
Certainly, the thyroid regulates growth and metabolism. If the energy of growth Rohini is out of whack, the thyroid is the first place it shows up.
We've painted a picture of a personality that is magnetic, productive, but potentially dangerous, prone to hoarding resources, obsessing over lovers, and even physically clogging up their own body with excess. So how does a Rohini native survive themselves? The outline points us back to the very first symbol we discussed, the banyan tree.
This is the key to the whole nakshatra. If you look at a banyan tree, it doesn't just grow up. It sends roots back down from its branches. It expands horizontally.
It creates an ecosystem.
Right. And that is the antidote to the hoarding shadow. The banyan tree provides shade for travelers, for animals, for the soil. It exists to support life other than itself.
So the shift from ox cart, which is just carrying goods to temple, isn't about stopping the accumulation of wealth. It's about changing who the wealth is for.
Precisely. If you fill a cart only for your own kitchen, you get the congestion, the jealousy, the rot. If you fill the cart to feed the village, you become the temple. You become the sustainer. Rohini is called the carrier. The spiritual question is, who are you carrying for?
The sources were very specific about remedies here. They mentioned the worship of nature.
Yes. Reverence for the earth, and specifically for cows. This isn't just religious ritual. It is about acknowledging the source of your abundance. If you are a Rohini type, you are drawing heavily from the earth's resources. You have to give back.
You have to complete the circuit.
You have to honor the soil and the creatures that sustain you. You cannot just extract.
And for those listening who are into sound therapy or mantras, we have some root sounds, or bija mantras.
The sounds for Rohini are Om, Arm, and Om, El.
Aram and Elaram. It sounds almost like a rumble, a growl.
It does. It is a very earthy, guttural sound. It resonates with the frequency of the star. It grounds the person. If you are feeling that apoplexy energy, that rush of heat or desire, these sounds are meant to pull you back down into the stability of the earth.
Bringing the energy down.
It brings the energy down from the head, where it causes strokes, into the body.
I also want to touch on the tarot connection mentioned in the notes, the Empress card.
It is a perfect visual for this integration. The Empress sits on a throne in the middle of a field of grain. She is pregnant, or at least symbolizes fertility. She is the great fruitful mother goddess.
Right. She's got it all.
She represents nature, passion, and abundance.
But she's sitting, right. She's not running around chasing the grain.
That is the crucial detail. She is composed. She allows things to grow around her. That is the evolved Rohini energy. You don't have to frantically chase like the first patata might want to. You cultivate, you create an earthly paradise, but you sit within it with a sense of grace.
I love that image. Creating a paradise, but having the grace to share it.
That is the key.
You know, as we wrap up, I keep thinking about the curse. We started with it, the moon being cursed to wax and wane because he loved Rohini too much. It feels like a warning label on a really beautiful package.
It is the unfinished mystery of the star.
Even after all this analysis, the psychology, the biology, the integration, that risk remains.
It does. The myth tells us that even the gods are not immune to the trap of attachment. The moon's love for Rohini caused an imbalance in the cosmos. It caused the other wives to suffer, and the punishment was decay, the waning moon.
So no matter how much we grow,
We must accept the cycle. We cannot stay in the eternal fullness of the full moon forever. Rohini represents the desire to create and to hold, but the universe demands rhythm.
it demands release.
It demands release. If you hold on to the summer forever, you destroy the earth. You need the winter.
So the challenge for the listener, whether you have planets here or you're just soaking in this energy, is ensuring your creation serves a higher purpose than your own comfort.
Precisely. Build the banyan tree, but make sure the shade is for everyone.
That is a powerful place to leave it. We've gone from the stars to the ox cart and finally to the temple.
From the chariot to the earth.
Thank you for guiding us through the Garden of Rohini.
Always a pleasure.
And to you, listening, what are you growing and who is it for? Something to think about until next time. This has been the Deep Dive at Cafe Karma.